All right, kindergarten art friends, it's time for your next assignment. We're on week 2. So let's make a second piece of artwork. I loved seeing all of the artwork that you made with your names. I learned lots about some of your favorite things, favorite colors, and it was so fun to see the work getting uploaded every day. Today, we're going to talk about a new way to make art that I bet some of you have already done before. And that way to make art is called collage. So some of you have made a collage before, but those who haven't, I'm going to explain. So the word collage actually comes from a French word that means to glue. Glue is going to be really important in us making our artwork. Scissors are also going to be very important in us making our artwork for our collage. So collage can refer to actually the procedure, the art process of cutting and pasting or cutting and gluing our pieces onto our paper. That means collage, but so does the actual finished piece of artwork. Also, it's called collage. So we're going to use some of the colored papers that were in your folder to create some shapes. We're going to use our shapes to assemble them onto our paper and make something out of all the pieces. So for your collage, you're going to need one of your white pieces of paper. This is our main project paper that we use in the art room. So you have lots of these papers in your folder. You just need one. So get one piece out. Also in your folder were lots of colored pieces of paper. I don't want to use all these. We'll probably use these to make a second collage this year in art. So I want you to pick a couple pieces out. Maybe you want to pick 1 or 2 of the crazy printed papers, and then maybe 3 or 4 of these. And if you need to use more, that's okay. We just don't want to use all of them. We're also going to need, obviously, the glue and the scissors we talked about. We're going to want a pencil because we're going to draw our shapes onto our papers before we cut them out. So we make sure we like the shape and to give ourselves a line to cut along. You're also going to want your crayons. After you cut out the shape, you are probably going to want and create your piece. You're probably going to want to draw and add some colorful details onto your paper too. So you might want to add some things with your crayons. So I would grab a box of crayons too. We're going to start today by talking about the element of art of shapes. Shapes are everywhere around us, and they're a very useful tool when we're making art. Today we're going to practice drawing some shapes by tracing them first, then maybe drawing our own. We're going to practice cutting out those shapes, and then we're going to do that again, but this time for a final project. And we'll use our colored paper, we'll draw or trace our shapes, we'll cut them out, and then we'll assemble them all together on a piece of paper to make a piece of art. And we'll talk about what kind of art we're going to make a little bit later. But first, let's talk about shapes. So shapes are a line that goes all the way around and connects back to itself. Okay, so we create an outline of a shape. Now, when we have shapes, we have 2 different kinds of shapes. We have some shapes that we call geometric shapes. Those are the types of shapes that you practice in math in your classroom. Those are the ones that have some rules about them, like squares, rectangles, triangles, circles. But we also have another type of shape. And I'm surrounded by a lot of those shapes right now. Those are the shapes we find in nature. Shapes like leaves. This leaf shape here is not a rectangle, it's not a circle, it's not an oval, it's its own unique shape. So we sometimes call those natural or organic shapes. So those are shapes that don't really have the same rules that our math shapes or our geometric shapes have. We're going to practice our geometric shapes, but you're going to have some time to draw some of your own unique shapes too. You have two shape papers that we're going to practice with first. So we'll start with the first one. Yours should be stapled together. If you look real closely, you'll see I have dotted lines for you to practice tracing each shape. So number one, trace each shape. On your own time, you can color them in. And then we'll practice cutting out a few too to practice our cutting skills. Let's start first with tracing our shapes. You should use a pencil for your work. I'm going to use my Sharpie so that you can see more clearly. When we're tracing, we're just following the dotted line until we come back to the point that we started on. Our first shape is a square. Square has 4 sides and each of them are the same length. Next to my square, I have a star. Stars are one of my favorite shapes, but they're very difficult to draw on your own. It takes a lot of practice. Next to our star, we have a circle. So take your time to trace in each shape as we go. If I get too far ahead of you, you can pause the video and catch back up. Or if you feel you made a mistake, use your eraser and try again. Next, we have a pentagon. A pentagon has 5 sides. I see a lot of pentagons on my soccer ball. In the very middle of our shape practice sheet is a triangle. There's lots of different shaped triangles. Then we have a hexagon. So a pentagon has 5 sides. A hexagon has 1 more. It has 6 sides. We'll go to the bottom row. Here's an example of a natural or organic shape. A heart. In the middle of the bottom row is a parallelogram. It's similar to a rectangle. So a rectangle looks like a square. It has 2 sets of sides that are the same, but not all 4 of the sides. So this parallelogram is not quite a rectangle because it's shifted. Then we have kind of a different star shape. Those are just a few shapes that we can practice that maybe you might want to use in your designs for our collage in a little bit. Let's go to our last page. This is where you can draw your own shapes. There are 2 types of shapes: the geometric or math shapes and the organic or natural shapes. Let's brainstorm and practice some organic shapes together. So we practiced a lot of math shapes on this page. What about some organic shapes? So I'm sitting outside in nature and I can see lots of different shapes that are organic or natural shapes. One of the ones I see in the sky right now is a cloud shape. So I'm going to draw a cloud shape. In this box, I think I'll draw a leaf shape. I have a fig tree behind me that has kind of heart-shaped leaves. They're a little different. Next, I'm gonna draw a shape that I see in my garden when I'm growing my squash. So these are really just any type of shape kind of from your imagination, but I want you to think about the shapes that you see outside. This is another type of leaf shape that I see on my plants outside. So these are all examples of natural shapes, shapes that you might see outside, some organic shapes. I sent some other pictures home, or some other papers home. These you can use as a template to trace onto your collage papers, and you can keep them and use them in the future. So I gave you some shapes to go ahead and cut around to help you. So rectangles, two different triangles, a square, a circle, a hexagon, a nice big square over here. You can also draw some of your own shapes here and cut them out to give yourself a template. So to give yourself a piece that you can trace. Since this is harder cardstock paper, it should last a little longer and be easier to become a tracer for you. So we practiced our shapes, and now it's time to talk about what we're going to do with our shapes. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to practice some cutting with our shapes. But we cannot do any sort of cutting until we talk about some scissor safety. So there are 3 rules for scissor safety. Number 1 is these are only for cutting paper, right? Only for cutting paper. These are not for cutting your friends. These are not for cutting pets. These are not for cutting hair. These are not for cutting clothing. These are only for cutting paper. What are they for? Only cutting paper. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, when you are not using your scissors, close them. When I'm using my scissors, they can be open, but when I'm finished, they should be resting, and they should be closed, and they should be put down somewhere safe. It's important to have a safe space for all your art supplies, and when you're not using your scissors, they should go back with the rest of your art supplies and not be left out where other siblings can find them. So, when we're not cutting, close your scissors, put them somewhere safe. The last rule about scissors is how we handle our scissors and what we do with them when we're not using them. So, how do we hold scissors safely? We hold our scissors safely by holding them around the bottom metal part. Okay, we close our hands around that part and we carry them safely, and we cover the tip when we carry them. That way, if we were to accidentally fall, we wouldn't get hurt. Right? If we carry our scissors like this and we were to fall, we could hurt ourselves. So we carry them safely like this. When we pass them to a friend, we hold them the same way, and we turn the handle towards our friends so our friends can grab them by the handle. Okay, so we hold them here, and they can take them from us from the handle. That's how we pass them to other people. Okay, so we hold them, we carry them, and we pass them to others by covering the sharp tip part and being very careful to keep them closed, because we are not cutting, so they are closed. So those are 3 rules about using scissors to keep you safe. Reminder, number 1, they are only for paper. You may not cut yourself, other people, pets, clothing, hair. Nope. Scissors are not for that. Our scissors are for cutting our paper. Number 2, when we are not cutting, our scissors stay closed and they stay in a safe place. They can stay in front of us while we work. When we are finished, they are back in our art supply bag, put somewhere safe. Number 3, when we're holding our scissors, we are careful to make sure that we are covering the sharp part and we are keeping it closed. So that way when we walk, if we were to fall, we would not hurt ourselves. We wouldn't hurt other people. And when we pass them to our friends, we present for them to pick them up from the handle. Those are the rules about scissor safety. Now, let's talk about how we use our scissors safely. When you are going to use your scissors, there are 2 different size holes for your hands. The hand you use to cut your paper, the hand that holds the scissors, is the same hand that you write with. So whichever hand you use when you write your name is the hand that's going to do the cutting, the hand that's going to hold the scissors. The little hole is for your thumb, and the big hole is for the rest of your fingers. So that's how my hand is going to go into my scissors. Now, when I'm cutting with my scissors should always point away from me. I should never try to cut with my scissors pointing back towards me. My scissors, when I'm using them, are always pointing out. I'm always cutting away. So, I'm going to start by cutting my triangle. I use my thumb, I pick my thumb up, and I push it down. Up and down. When I do that, that is how I open and close and move my scissors to cut. Now right here, my line comes back towards me. But I don't want to turn, I'm not supposed to turn my scissors and cut back towards me, right? I have another hand. The hand that doesn't usually do the work when we're writing or in art, the hand that just maybe is kind of a lazy hand. This is our helper hand. Our helper hand has the most important job when we are cutting. Our helper hand holds our paper still. Our helper hand turns our paper. Okay, so my scissors didn't move. My helper hand moved the paper for me so I can keep cutting. Now, as I'm trying to cut my shape, I'm getting a lot of extra paper here, and it's going to get in my way as I keep trying to go. So I might cut that paper off, get it out of the way. Now my helper hand's going to turn my paper again so that my scissors keep pointing away as I'm cutting. Okay, I cut out my first shape here. So let's go over those rules one more time. I'll cut the big square out this time. Okay, when I'm cutting with my scissors, I always cut away. My helper hand holds and turns my paper so I can keep pointing my scissors and cutting away. Now, my helper hand needs to stay out of the way too. I need to make sure that I don't cut myself, so my helper hand stays away. It moves around the paper to stay out of the way. And as I'm going, I'm picking up with my thumb. My thumb is doing the work. Up and down as I move down the paper. Okay, so These are little paper scraps. I could maybe use these. I'm going to set these off to the side. If they're too small, these would go into the trash can to help keep my workspace clean because I am in charge of cleaning up my mess. A big piece like this is definitely something I want to keep. I might draw other shapes or cut other things out of paper out of these. So this is important for me to save. This is a lot of paper I could still use. So this would go back in my folder. Next, let's talk about how we're supposed to use our glue. We have one bottle of glue. Now, I have my bigger bottle of glue as my example, but you have a small bottle of glue. We need to use it in just the right way so we don't run out, and we can use it for all the projects we have planned for glue this quarter. So, one important thing is to keep your glue lid closed when you're not using it. So I can see that my glue lid is closed. So the first thing I need to do before I can use my glue is to twist it to open it up. Okay, now my glue bottle is open, and then when I'm finished, I'll twist it back down to close it all the way. So I'm going to open it up so I can use it. So I saved these pieces. These are my some of my extra pieces, so I can use this as an example to show you how we're going to glue. So I'm going to glue my smaller rectangle on my big rectangle to show you how we use our glue. So we are going to trace the outside of our shape with our glue to glue it down. I don't want to squeeze too hard. I just need a little. So I'm going to squeeze gently and make a line close to my edge, but not right on my edge of my glue. And I'm tracing my shape. See how I have one small line of glue going all the way around my shape? This is just enough glue. I don't need any more glue than this. If I have too much glue on my my piece, I'm going to make a really big mess, and it's going to get my whole art project sticky. Okay, I could, if I have a shape that's a little bigger than this, I could also draw an X through the middle to make sure that the middle gets glued down too. But for smaller pieces, just kind of going around the outside will be just enough glue. So let me show you what I do next. Okay, I'm gonna touch it where I'm gonna try not to get too much glue on my fingers. If I do, it's okay. Glue doesn't hurt me. I can wash my hands, it'll come off. See, I got some on my finger already. So I'm gonna set it down carefully where I want it to go, and then I'm gonna smooth along the edges. A little bit of glue where I have maybe a little bit too much, kind of squeaked out the sides. That's okay, it'll dry. And now I'll press it through the middle. So you just rub gently and trace around the outside with your finger to press down to make sure that all the glue touches down on the paper, and it will dry and stick to make sure that none of my pieces of my hard work are gonna fall off. Okay, that's how we use our glue. And now that I'm finished with my glue, I better close the lid so my glue doesn't dry out. The next step is to start to make the shapes I'm going to need for my piece, right? We are going to make a collage of a house. So I want to think about the shapes that might help me to make my house. I might want to use my square to trace. Maybe that will be the base of my house. My triangle might make for a great roof. I might want rectangles or squares. Maybe I have a chimney at my house, a door, some windows. Okay, Your house can look like the house you live in. Your house can be imaginary and crazy. It's up to your imagination and your artist decisions. We always get to make decisions about our artwork. So this is one of your artistic decisions. What will your house look like? Which shapes will you use to make your house? So you can draw some of those and cut them out, or you can just draw them straight on the paper. But tracing will help get the shape exactly how you want it, especially if you want to use one of the shapes that we practiced. I'm going to start with this piece. Got to decide what color my house is going to be. So I think my house is going to be here. Now, since I'm going to I want it to be close to the edge. I don't want to put it straight in the middle. I want to leave myself as much extra paper as I can. So if I start it over here, I'm saving myself a lot more paper that I could make other shapes out of or use for my other project. And since this is a square, I can put it all the way against in the corner. Now I'm only going to have to trace 2 lines and only have 2 lines to cut out. You should use your pencil for this, but I'm going to use my marker so you can clearly see my lines. So I'm carefully tracing. So just like when I'm cutting, my helper hand has a job. It holds my paper still. It holds your paper still while you're tracing too. So my helper hand was holding really still and pressing down tight while I traced so that my shape didn't move while I was trying to trace it. Okay, I'm going to set my tracer off to the side. I'm going to close up my marker so you can just set down your pencil, and then it's time to get my scissors out to cut out my piece. So I'm going to remember that when I cut, my scissors point away, and my helper hand is going to hold and turn my paper. I lift my thumb up and down to cut, and I move, and then my helper hand turns so that I'm still pointing away. Then my thumb goes up and down as I slide my scissors forward to cut my square out. Next, I'm going to set my square off to the side. It's time for my triangle. This will be a good shape for my roof, I think. Now I'm going to set my triangle right on one of the lines. That's one less line I have to make. My helper hand is going to hold my triangle nice and still while I trace along its side. Set my tracer off to the side. My helper hand picks up my paper. It's going to hold it still and turn it. My helper hand, my fingers are out of the way. I have my scissors pointing away from me. Gonna pause for the helicopter so you hear me. Now my thumb is going to pick up and down as I move my scissors forward. They're pointing away, so I'm safe. Helper hand holds and turns my paper. Now I'm remembering as I'm using my paper that I have lots of room left to make more shapes and more designs. So this, if I decide not to use any more of it, this would go back in my folder. There's still plenty of art space left on that paper. Okay, I got some shapes. I'm going to keep working, but I'm going to speed up my video. Okay, this is when you can start making your own work, but you can follow along too and see how I complete my piece. I hope you saw that as I was working, I haven't used my glue yet. I am arranging my pieces on my paper as I go because I'm not sure that I'm going to like exactly where I lay everything out as I start adding more pieces. So it's important to lay everything down first before you glue it down. Now that I have this down, I think I'm ready to start gluing down some of my pieces. What I'm going to do first is glue my little pieces on here, and I'm going to glue everything onto the big pieces and then glue the big pieces on the paper. I'm going to speed this part up too, and you can watch how I work. Remember, we're going to trace around the outside, maybe a little on the inside, like my big pieces here, or my big triangle. I might want to do a little X through the middle, but my little pieces will just need a tiny line. This will just need to trace the outside. So watch how I work. I'll speed it up, pause it if you need to. Okay, I have my basic house all put together. I have some tiny little scraps here that I don't think I'm going to use. These would be perfect for the trash can. Some other ones, I might save this, I might use this. But I'm going to start to get some of that stuff set out of the way. So far, I used lots of geometric shapes. I used all geometric shapes. I have some rectangles, I have some squares, I have some triangles. Now I'm going to think of some of those natural shapes to add for some of my details. This here is my window box. For my window box, I'm going to cut some plants that are going to go in my window box. So I'm going to use that cloud shape to be the little ferns that I have for my window box. So you can see my scissors are not really moving. It's just my helper hand that's turning and moving my paper as I go. Right, my helper hand stayed still. Or my helper hand moved. My cutting hand stayed still. Put some glue on it, and I'm going to glue that into my little window box. There are some great papers that I included for you to use for some shapes for some outdoor details. Now this cool green paper is going to make for a really good tree. My house is surrounded by really big trees. So again, my organic natural shape can kind of be any shape that it wants. This one is for a good tree shape. And now I'm going to point my scissors away. I'm going to let my helper hand turn this paper while my cutting hand just has to point to the front and keep on cutting while my helper hand gets out of the way, holds the paper still, and turns it for my cutting hand. So that's going to make for a great tree top. I'm going to glue that onto my piece. So it's your choice what type of details you might add to your piece. You can cut them and continue to make a collage. You can also, at this point, get your crayons out and start to draw some of your details. I really don't have a piece of paper that is the right color for my tree, but I have a color that will work for me. So this would be another kind of organic shape to cut. So I'm going to try to make it a tree shape. So it's kind of got a V at the top for where my branches are going into the leaves. Not in the way. I'll cut it out. Down. Helper hand is sure busy turning my paper. Let's see. That's probably perfect. I'll just cut off the bottom there. Okay, it's coming together. It's time for you to get started on yours. Enough watching Miss Tess work. It's time for your work. All right, I've got mine almost done. It's time for me to get in there and add some details with my crayons. But it's also time for you to get to work. A few things to remember. Use your scissors safely. Hold them safely. Use them safely, pointing away from you. Make sure your helper hand helps you to stay safe. Your glue, remember when you're finished, twist it back down and close it so it doesn't dry out and it doesn't make a mess. Remember to clean up when you're finished. Little scraps of paper go into the trash can. Big scraps of paper put back in your folder. You might use them next time. Have a lot of fun and be creative. I cannot wait to see what you come up with next. And remember to clean up when you're finished. When your picture is all finished, use an adult to help you to upload your work onto Artsonia, so that's the way you turn it in. If you have any problems or questions with that, please reach out so that I can help you, and I cannot wait to see the art that you make this week. I hope you have fun making your collage, and I hope that you remember all of our safety rules so that you can make your art safely at home. See you next time.